Incredible hero dog's heartfelt plea revealed. Amazing rescue of baby squirrel from deadly snake. Sarah's heart raced as she watched Buddy, her four-legged companion, charge into the underbrush. The sweet golden retriever's bark echoed with fierce determination, a stark contrast to the weight pressing down on her chest. She had always envisioned her life filled with the cries of animals needing care, not tangled in suffocating student debt and the suffocating loneliness of her parents' old farmhouse. Each creaky floorboard seemed to whisper her unfulfilled dreams, amplifying the pressure that tightened around her throat. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the trees as Sarah fought to shove aside her worries, focusing instead on the small figure in distress, an injured baby squirrel trapped in the coils of a snake. Fear ignited in her chest. What if she lost Buddy? What if he got hurt? But uncertainty clawed at her. Was she meant to be this helpless dreamer forever? For every step she took closer to the confrontation, alcohol clouds of doubt dulled her resolve. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With Buddy in harm's way, the choice was stark: to freeze or leap forward in a desperate bid for both the squirrel's and her dog's safety. Time slowed. She could almost hear her heartbeat in her ears as she held her breath, torn between holding back and stepping into the storm brewing around her. As Buddy lunged headfirst into danger, she felt pride swell in direct opposition to agonizing fear. She closed her eyes, wishing she could believe in the future she had once envisioned. When Buddy triumphed against the snake, innocence and bravery entwined, the world shifted. The rescue was filmed by a neighbor and spread like wildfire. Her small-town struggles suddenly thrust into the spotlight. As phone notifications chimed with messages and local media inquiries, Sarah's heart tightened. Everyone saw her as some kind of hero, but what did she think of herself? A dreamer with an expensive education and no tangible path forward. Yet standing in front of the camera, anxiety gripped her throat when a local businessman ridiculed her aspirations. "You think you can make a living off this dream?" he jeered, relentless. His words lingered in her mind, igniting self-doubt that threatened to drown her excitement. But just as her confidence wavered, Buddy nudged the baby squirrel towards her, a silent affirmation of their bond, a reminder that simplicity often carried the greatest significance. And as she prepared for her upcoming interview, a mix of hope and dread threatened to spill over. What if she failed? What if the scrutiny of the businessman proved true? Just when she felt the walls closing in, Sarah looked down, meeting Buddy's warm, trusting eyes. With the weight of the world pressing on her, she took a deep breath, ready to take a stand, not just for the animals she loved, but for herself. Ambivalence swirled in her. Was she willing to embrace this chance, even if it meant confronting her worst fears? As the camera lights flickered on, Sarah's heart thudded with every question yet unanswered, ready to dare herself anew. The studio lights were blinding, and Sarah felt as though she were standing on the edge of a high cliff, where one misstep could send her tumbling into the abyss. The producer's voice crackled through the earpiece, guiding her through what she needed to say, but each word felt heavy in her mouth. She was supposed to be excited about the chance to tell her story, yet the fear of judgment loomed over her like a storm cloud. As the host smiled warmly at her from across the table, she wrestled with the notion that she had a platform now, but could she use it wisely? Would sharing her passion for animal care earn her credibility or push her further into the realm of ridicule? Doubts wrapped around her like a tightening noose, but the glint of hope nestled beneath looked like Buddy, who sat patiently at her feet, a comforting presence anchoring her amidst the chaos. "Sarah, tell us about that day with Buddy," the host prompted, genuinely curious. The swell of memories rushed back. The moment she had seen the stagnant shadow of the snake, the rush of adrenaline, and the pride followed by an unanticipated wave of gratitude from her community. "It was unexpected," she said slowly, grounding herself in the reality of what she had achieved together with Buddy. "I didn't think I could muster the courage to intervene. But the thought of losing him, of leaving that squirrel to die, it all pushed me forward. Each word became a stepping stone, pulling her away from the precipice as she relived the commitment she'd made, not just to the animals she loved, but to herself. The questions were relentless, but they only fueled her determination. The host shifted slightly, closing in with a sympathetic tone. But how did you feel when that businessman scoffed at your aspirations? A fresh wave of tension crashed over her, yet she felt an unfamiliar strength stirring within. At first I was crushed. His words replayed in my mind, and I wondered if he was right. She glanced at Buddy, the embodiment of her devotion. But when I thought about it, I realized I'd never know what could happen if I didn't even try. She remembered the first time she helped nurse an injured bird back to health, the thrill of knowing she could make a difference. That memory flickered alive, and something clicked. She was not merely an aspiring veterinarian. She was a healer, someone bound to embrace her capabilities. The narrative transformed. As the interview wrapped up, she felt empowered. No longer the dreamy girl wallowing in self-doubt, but a woman stepping into her future. She smiled into the camera as she spoke about her plans, volunteering at local animal shelters, pursuing her certification, and learning the ins and outs of animal care. Each word ignited a fire within her, illuminating dark corners where doubt once lingered. After the camera stopped rolling, she felt lighter. The real challenge lay ahead. She would need to confront not just the naysayers, but also her own shadows of insecurity. Would she be brave enough to take the next steps in her journey, to challenge the skepticism she feared? It was a fight she had to choose. As Sarah stepped out of the studio, the weight of the world still pressed against her shoulders, but it now felt more like a protective cloak. She realized it wasn't enough to hold her dreams close. She had to fight for them. And the stakes were much higher now. More than just personal ambitions, she had something bigger pressing on her heart. Beneath the flood of possibilities and fears, the lingering question echoed inside her. Was she truly ready to commit to the life she wanted, even if it meant navigating unexpected traps along the way? As she looked down at Buddy, a new understanding washed over her. She would never be alone in this journey. But what awaited her at the next crossroads? The thrill of the studio had only just begun to settle when Sarah stepped into the bright afternoon sun. Warm light enveloped her, yet a different storm brewed inside her mind. Each footstep away from the cameras felt like a small victory, and yet the echoes of doubt clawed at her resolve. She could feel that the world outside the studio had shifted slightly. Her story had been told, but all the self-doubt that had lurked in the shadows now loomed larger. As she and Buddy walked through the crowded streets, she couldn't help but notice the glances of strangers, eyes flickering with interest. Who were they seeing? An aspiring vet, or a mere girl playing pretend? This uncertainty surged within her, mixing exhilaration with anxiety. The deeper she breathed, the more intensely she questioned her intentions. Was she brave enough to truly step into the role she aspired to occupy? The days that followed were a blur of contrasting emotions. While her heart raced with newfound ambition, her mind remained haunted by those dismissive words from the businessman. "You're wasting your time." Each time she found herself near a community center, she hesitated. She had reached out to volunteer, yet uncertainty gripped her tight. Would she be met with disdain, or would they see her passion? The fear of judgment twisted with the desire to prove herself. One afternoon she found herself sitting in front of her computer, and she began searching for local animal shelters. Hours passed as she scrolled through open volunteer positions and internship opportunities. Names of familiar organizations flashed across the screen, sparking memories of the animals she had helped in her childhood. Her heart raced, realizing how close she was to beginning the internal metamorphosis she once only dreamt about. Yet when she clicked into a volunteer application, her fingers froze above the keyboard. Why should they choose me? The harsh echo of doubt filled her. Visions of failure filled her mind's canvas. If she wasn't cut out for this, then what was next? Shaking her head, she realized this was her moment to confront the internal barriers. It was time to dismantle her fortress of fear. With determination, she turned off the screen and rose from her chair. If others didn't see her worth, she would have to show them. Show herself. In each step she took toward the nearby animal shelter, She repeated words to herself like a mantra. I am capable. I am not alone. When she arrived, the cool air embraced her, yet the weight of expectation pressed down harder. Initially, the manager seemed cautious, eyeing her like a wary hawk. What do you want here? Taking a breath, Sarah shared her story, the pride wrapped around each word. They listened, and in those moments she could sense the shift. No longer was she an outsider clinging to a dream. She was a contender in the world she desired. The manager's face softened as she replied, It's not the ambition we doubt, but the commitment to see it through. Their eyes held steady. She could now feel the connection she yearned for. Feeling emboldened, Sarah stepped forward and proposed a detailed plan for her involvement. Not merely seeking approval, she was claiming her space in this community, ready to invest her time and skills. And just as she began to sketch out her vision for the shelter, a familiar voice echoed in her memory, one that challenged her to rise above doubt. But as the words flowed freely, another thought crept in. Was this bold advocacy enough to quell the fear of judgment that shadowed her every effort? With Buddy panting by her side, she found both reassurance and an additional layer of motivation. Fear may always exist, but she wouldn't let it stall her progress. The time had come to face not only external skepticism, but the internal conflict that threatened to undermine her journey. As she turned to leave the shelter, ready to put her plans into action, the lingering question tugged at her once more. Could she sustain the courage needed to fulfill her goals? Only the coming days would reveal if she had the perseverance to become not just a worker in the animal care world, but a true advocate for the lives she wished to save. The following week unfolded with a sense of urgency and determination that crackled in the air around Sarah. Each early morning rose with a new promise, an opportunity to step closer to her goals. Armed with an outline of tasks for the animal shelter, she waded into a new rhythm fueled by anticipation and the electric pulse of self-belief. Understanding that commitment would be the true test of her ambition transformed her metaphorical battleground. As she stepped over the threshold of the shelter each day, her resolve solidified. Laughter and chaos echoed through the halls, filled with barking dogs and fleeting kittens. Sarah embraced the chaos, lost in the flurry of activity that pulled her away from self-doubt. The initial apprehension of not being accepted gradually melted into newfound confidence as she engaged with the team, shared ideas, and worked alongside volunteers who were equally passionate about animal welfare. But the shadow of her old insecurities lingered in the periphery. While she began to connect with the animals and her fellow volunteers, the fear of inadequacy twisted slightly in her gut each time the manager, Lila, entrusted her with responsibilities. Can I really handle this? Echoed in her thoughts when she was assigned to lead a small team during a training session for new volunteers. That hesitation crept back in, raw and relentless. Determined to confront this feeling, Sarah prepared extensively. She gathered information on training best practices, pored over her notes, and practiced her presentation in front of Buddy, who wagged his tail as if cheering her on. On the day of the session, excitement fought against a tide of trepidation. Standing in front of the small group, she felt the familiar surge of doubt wash over her. Yet something else began to crystallize within her. She remembered the purpose behind her work, the very reason she had stepped into the shelter in the first place. As she began, her voice was shaky, but she steadied her resolve. Thank you all for being here today, she began, her heart racing. I'm excited to share some techniques on animal care and training. Together we can make a difference. Once the words began to flow, however, momentum surged within her. To her surprise, the experience transformed into a dialogue. Recognizing the eagerness of her team to learn ignited a new fire in her. As she navigated through training methods, questions sprouted from those she spoke to, making the discussion lively and enriching. The more she spoke, the more she realized the passion she carried spilled out beyond herself and reached others, wrapping around the room like a warm embrace. By the end of the session, Sarah was enveloped in a sense of accomplishment. Not only had she delivered the training, but she had galvanized her team, not just to follow instructions, but to deepen their love for animals and find their own unique voices within the shelter. The delighted expressions on her peers' faces told her she had undergone a transformation of her own. She left the meeting with a renewed sense of clarity. She wasn't merely participating but leading and inspiring others. However, as she walked home that evening, the fluttering lightness in her chest wrestled against an inner turmoil. What would happen when the next significant challenge emerged? Was this foundation she had built strong enough to withstand doubts that would undoubtedly arise in time? The shadows of judgment and the looming specter of the businessman's words surged in with a vengeance. In those quiet moments, a seed of anxiety was planted, urging her to confront this question. Could this newfound confidence endure the pressure of real-life scenarios? Could she navigate the complexities of animal advocacy amidst the scrutiny of an unforgiving world? This uncertainty began to gnaw at her once more, but it carried with it a sharpened focus. With the realization of her growth came the intense urge to delve deeper, face it head-on, and seek answers. The adventure of self-discovery was far from over. It was just beginning. Armed with resolve, Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Would she embrace the next challenge that beckoned her into the unknown? The journey forward required an audacity she had yet to fully unveil, yet there was an undeniable strength urging her to do so. The moment of truth was approaching, and she needed to summon the courage to unearth the next layer of her evolution. The following week, a pivotal moment arrived. The shelter blossomed with activity, but beneath the surface, Sarah felt an undercurrent of expectation, threading its way into her daily routine. Each task she undertook was infused with significance. It was as if she were treading on a tightrope suspended high between her growing confidence and the constant fear of failure. An incident that occurred midweek intensified this sense of urgency. During a routine checkup on the animals, a new arrival, a timid golden retriever named Max, caught her attention. Whimpering in his corner and trembling with apprehension, he seemed to embody all that Sarah feared. Unsure of his past but likely the victim of neglect, Max mirrored the struggle within her, and she felt a profound urge to help him not only because of his need, but also to confront the soft spot of vulnerability within herself. Sarah waded in slowly, speaking softly to him, recalling her own journey toward confidence and acceptance. "You're safe here, Max," she whispered, determined to reach through the barriers he had built. She learned quickly that patience was vital, as each small step forward seemed monumental against her uncertainties. Days passed, and she began to craft a deeper connection, gaining his trust through gentle interactions and consistent care. Her focus on Max, however, only magnified the shadows of her insecurities. When Lila mentioned upcoming adoption days where Max would need to showcase his progress, the anticipation sent a tremor of dread through Sarah. What if she failed not only to help Max, but also to manage the pressure of facilitating the event? As her mind spiraled into overanalyzing every possibility, she recognized that this could be a moment that defined her. The potential for public failure felt crushing. Determined not to let Max down, she channeled her anxiety into preparation. The thought of showcasing not just Max's improvements but her own capabilities overwhelmed her, yet echoed with the question that had been haunting her for weeks. Was she ready to transform this challenge into an opportunity for growth? Each training session, she paid closer attention to not just the commands, but also how she modeled confidence and assurance in front of both the animals and her team. Then came adoption day. An electric atmosphere filled the shelter as families arrived, hearts eager and hopeful. Underneath Sarah's professional exterior, though, lay a storm of self-doubt flaring up like wildfire. She watched as fellow volunteers mingled with visitors, effortlessly guiding them through the adoption process. Sarah felt like an imposter amidst them, questioning whether she could genuinely handle her responsibilities without faltering. Pushing through, she reminded herself of her bonding sessions with Max. Her ears perked up as she heard Lila call her name, an unexpected invitation to introduce Max to a family. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears as she approached the throng, her palms clammy and her stomach churning. This could be where it all changes, she thought vehemently. Standing with Max at her side, she began to speak, and to her astonishment her voice quivered initially but then steadied as awareness took hold. The emotional weight of Max's transformation was not just a story about a dog, but about her journey too, a reflection of resilience for both of them. Each sentence she articulated continued to weave a tapestry of connection and urgency, creating a bridge between her struggle and those listening. But then, from the crowd, a familiar face emerged. The businessman from her past whose harsh words haunted her still. His presence flicked a switch inside her, igniting doubts and fears she had skillfully contained. As he approached, she sensed judgment flicker in his gaze, and the warmth she had cultivated started to fray. The moment hung in the air, a perfect storm of challenge and potential epiphany. Would she allow the lingering voices of past criticism to dictate her fate? Would she self-sabotage or confront this specter head-on? The upcoming confrontation pulled her deeper into a wrestle with her innate capacities, while Max's potential adoption hung tantalizingly at stake. Sarah's heart raced as she understood that she could glean strength even from the shadows. The true test lay ahead, a confrontation not just with an adversary, but with the fragments of her own self-doubt. This was her time to illustrate not just growth, but unyielding courage. The moment of reckoning was upon her, and her next words would determine whether she reclaimed her journey or succumbed to the doubts of yesterday. As Sarah stood face to face with her past, time distorted, stretching the moment into what felt like an eternity. Each breath weighed heavy with the decision brewing within her. Max shifted by her side, sensing her turmoil. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the bond they had nurtured, letting it anchor her against the tide of old emotions. "Sarah," the businessman said, his voice smooth, carrying a tone laced with condescension. "I see you're still playing with pets. I wasn't aware you had decided on this career path. Is this what you call success now?" His words floated in the charged air, each syllable dripping with skepticism, and Sarah felt a sharp pang of recognition. It was the very condescension that had once silenced her. But not today. Today was different. She had endured too much, both for herself and for Max, who was now emerging as a symbol of resilience. "Actually, I'm helping these animals find homes," she responded, her voice steady with a newfound strength. "They deserve love and care just like anyone else." Anyone. His raised eyebrow mocked her sincerity, but something within her ignited further. Sarah realized this was her chance, not just to defend her position but to redefine what success meant to her. She met his gaze with depth, refusing to let his judgment crumble her focus. "This isn't just about adopting dogs," she continued, her passion igniting her words. "It's about healing, both for them and for the people who adopt them. You see, we all have scars. These animals wear theirs on the outside, and that shouldn't diminish their worth." With each spoken word, she felt layers of insecurity peel away, as if she were shedding skin that no longer served her. The crowd had grown quiet, now leaning in, entranced by the confrontation and her impassioned defense. As she spoke about Max and his journey from fear to trust, she felt the narrative shift. What had once been a matter of personal inadequacy was transforming into a tapestry of strength. She highlighted the moments of connection she had fostered with him, the way patience had forged an unbreakable bond. The businessman's expression wavered, the judgment cracking just a tad. Sarah seized the moment. "Every dog deserves a chance to thrive, and so does every person. Sometimes it just takes someone willing to believe in them," she said softly, glancing at Max. He looked up at her, the trust shared between them shimmering in the air. And right there, in that moment, Sarah discovered a hidden competence she hadn't fully realized before, a capacity to advocate, not just for the animals, but for herself as well. She understood her worth intricately tied to these moments of bravery, her courage finding its voice not in grand gestures but in this exact confrontation. A ripple of applause broke out among the audience behind her, filling her heart with warmth. She smiled, a genuine expression that radiated outwards, illuminating the dark corners of self-doubt that had previously lurked in her mind. But just as this revelation unfurled, she spotted movement in the corner of her eye. Another dog, a young beagle, had slipped from its handler and was darting towards the exit. The panic surged, challenging her newfound composure. "Max!" she called, invoking his loyal spirit. "Let's go!" Her mind raced, but this time, it wasn't consumed with fear. Instead, it whirred with purpose. She could turn this chaotic moment into another opportunity, an opportunity to reveal not just her growth, but a chance to truly integrate Max's newly found spirit into the immediate demands of the moment. As she and Max both sprang into action, the crowd shifted with anticipation, uncertainty dangling in the air once more. Sarah had faced her inner demon, but encountered a new challenge, one that demanded immediate clarity of thought and courage in the face of unfolding chaos. Would she give in to panic, or would she rise once again, embracing her ongoing journey of resilience as both a mentor and an advocate? The tension spun tighter than before as she chased after the beagle. Her heart pounded with the thrill of seeking clarity even amid rising uncertainty. The voice that had once been silenced was now loud and unmistakable, urging her onward. As Sarah sprinted after the beagle, her thoughts intermingled with instinct. The world around her faded into a blur, the scattered bursts of conversation silenced by the pounding of her heart and the urgency of the moment. She felt a surge of adrenaline, her fear from before rapidly morphing into a laser focus on what needed to be done. "Max, go!" she commanded, the sharpness in her voice infused with authority. The golden retriever responded without hesitation, dashing ahead, his strong limbs propelling him to the beagle's trail. Adrenaline rushed through Sarah as she thought of how far they had come. The person she used to be, locked in the chains of her insecurity, was now trading fear for action. The beagle darted, though its path was erratic. Playful instincts led it on a chaotic course. Each twist and turn tested Sarah's resolve. But with every stride, she felt the weight of expectation peel away like an old skin. This was not just about regaining control over a runaway dog. It was about embodying the advocacy for resilience she'd just spoken of. She felt an echoing purpose with every breath, a mantra forming in her mind. Every dog deserves a chance. The beagle skidded toward the door, a blur of fur in panic, just as it reached a slight opening. If it slipped outside, she could not let that happen. She pushed harder, her shoes pounding against the floor, amplified by encouragement from the surrounding crowd, now put at the edge of their seats, even as her own feelings of vulnerability battled with the excitement of action. This was not just an animal rescue. This was an activated call to a deeper part of herself, a part that had lain dormant for years. Sarah's determination morphed into a maneuver, her instincts guiding her to outpace the escape artist. Achieving that connection both with Max and with the beagle wasn't merely about fetching those dogs anymore. It was a profound realization of her growth. "Just a bit further," she shouted, matching her tone with her spirit. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of Max bounding ahead, a brilliant flash of gold. An emotional knot began uncoiling as he closed the distance with spirit, urging the beagle to hesitate. But before she could celebrate, the beagle's tiny frame jolted toward the exit, narrowly escaping into the open air. "No!" Panic flickered in Sarah's chest, but she drew upon a new sense of agency. Instead of succumbing to that fear, she channeled it into clarity. "Max!" She watched as he dove after the beagle, determination radiating off him in ripples. Could she trust in her companion's newfound spirit to guide them through this? With a deep breath, she broke the distance, her feet pounding in confidence. She reached them just as the beagle hesitated, inching closer to a busy road beyond. A rush of instinct took hold. "We need to get to him now." In an unexpected twist, Max exhibited the courage and charisma she had seen bloom within him over their time together. He gently nudged the beagle, coaxing it toward safety, as Sarah reached down with her hand extended, speaking softly but firmly. "Come here, little buddy, it's all right. We've got you," she assured the terrified pup, her voice unshaken by the chaos unfolding around them. At that moment, she felt the fullness of her growth. She had become not merely a caretaker, but a vigilant protector. The beagle took one timid step forward, then another, drawn in by the empathy radiating from both Sarah and Max. As their eyes met, the connection was palpable, not just between humans and dogs, but a bridge between fear and safety. Just at that moment, a sharp shout broke through the haze, an unfamiliar voice rejecting her tranquility. "What are you doing? You're drawing all this chaotic attention for nothing." Sarah turned, confronting the source. The businessman stood nearby, arms crossed, a familiar ghost of condescension gripping his features once more. But this time, instead of feeling crushed, she felt empowered. She had found her voice in the noise of judgment, the essence of her newfound strength woven into her response. "This isn't about attention, it's about the dogs," she said fiercely, her light igniting once more. "It's always been about giving a chance." With a glimmer of resolve, Sarah stood her ground, Max by her side, poised to defend their shared purpose. The world around her swirled with mounting tension, and she understood one vital truth. The dogs, and her own redemption, needed her to take charge, to step beyond the chaos. But in that moment, would she discover the limits of her courage? Or would she rise to the occasion yet again? The words hung in the air, the echo of the challenge inviting her to a deeper confrontation than she anticipated. The challenge simmered between Sarah and the businessman, her heart pounding in response to the surge of pressure. In that moment, she sensed the weight of her own inner conflict, the desire to advocate, to scream back at the naysayer, clashing with the discipline she had begun to cultivate. "Why can't you see?" she breathed, her mind racing through memories of timid decisions, how she had let others dictate her voice, how compliance had stifled her passion. Frustration and fervor collided inside her, igniting a fierce resolve to stand tall against mockery. Across the room she observed the beagle inching closer to her, its brow furrowed, caught between trust and fear, mirroring Sarah's own journey. She understood then, this was about more than just saving a dog. It was a reflection of her internal battles and victories. "Max, stay with him," she instructed, eyes flicking confidently back to the businessman. "It's about empathy, not spectacle. And I refuse to let fear dim the light of care." The intensity of her words echoed within her, grounding her firmly in the now. A ripple of surprise crossed the businessman's face, an unspoken question forming in his gaze. What had he provoked? "Fine," he replied with a condescending shrug, but she could now read the uncertainty beneath his bravado. He was clearly unaccustomed to being challenged, especially not so passionately. Sarah inhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts like a tactical blueprint. The encounter was shifting the very parameters of her existence. She felt the familiar pull of self-doubt, a siren song tugging at the edges of her confidence. But the weight was lighter now, not because the doubts had disappeared, but because she had adopted a new perspective. In that instant, she realized that her growth was not just personal, but rooted in forming connections. "Look," she said firmly, addressing the crowd that had gathered around them, "we're all here for one reason. These animals deserve the best chance at life just as we do. Let's remember that." The audience shifted closer, drawn into her space as if they were looking for something they themselves hadn't known they needed. There was hope in the way she intertwined her emerging confidence with her love for the dogs, a unique fusion of strength and vulnerability. The businessman's stance shifted slightly. Sarah noticed more powerfully than the reactions of those around her. She was transforming not just into a defender for the beagle, but an arbiter for something greater. "Let's create a path forward. Together." Max remained beside the beagle, its tentative posture gradually easing, emboldened by the emotional shift in Sarah. With every soft whisper and deliberate motion, she reaffirmed her commitment, not just to the animals she saved, but to the boldness she'd long sought within herself. As the murmurs of encouragement stirred through the crowd, Sarah found herself at a crossroads, weighing options in her mind. Take this momentum and harness it, making it a rallying cry for animal rights, or allow apprehension to creep back in, risking losing this powerful surge of community connection. The businessman huffed, cornered by the awakening compassion surrounding them. "What's your big plan, huh?" His challenge echoed in the air. Was this truly the pivotal moment where she would declare her ambition, revealing a vision beyond merely rescuing dogs? Taking a leap into the unknown loomed before her. Could she embrace this new role and lead the charge, or would she retreat into her comfort zone? Her heart quickened as she considered all that lay ahead. The decision she made could catapult her into unfamiliar territory, challenging her to articulate her vision to the world beyond her sheltered ambitions. As the moment of truth edged closer, Sarah felt the tingle of anticipation ripple through her. What would she choose to do next? In grappling with her enemy not just outside, but within, the real question emerged. Could she harness this newfound courage and transform it into something lasting? The crowded air buzzed with potential, a crucible of change waiting for her command. And in that silence, as the gaze of the businessman bore down upon her expecting an answer, a voice broke from the depths of her heart. A voice that determined the shape of her future. The words hung in the air, pregnant with potential. Sarah felt the weight of every gaze directed at her, each person partly breathless with anticipation. She'd always tiptoed around her ambitions, but now she teetered on the precipice of something larger than herself. "My plan," she began, her voice steadier than she had anticipated, "is to build a sanctuary where animals and people can heal and grow together." The slight shift in the businessman's posture told her all she needed to know. She had struck a chord. It was as if the room contracted around her, energy pulsing from every listener, feeding her resolve. "We need a place that champions compassion over indifference, a space where we don't just rescue animals, but educate our community about their care and rights." The enthusiasm she poured into her words fueled her courage. Clarity surged within her, and she couldn't ignore the flicker of bold ambition. It felt electric, ranging from a whisper in the depths of her soul to a palpable force that urged her forward. This was not merely about the beagle or the moment. It was about reclaiming her narrative. She was done with being a spectator in her own life. The businessman glanced at his colleagues, clearly unsettled by her unexpected passion. "And how are you going to fund this little venture?" he retorted, though his voice held less bravado, more incredulity. It was a fair question, one she had pondered earlier while preparing her thoughts. "I'll find a way," she asserted, feeling a fire spark behind her eyes. "Together we could seek grants, collaborate with local businesses, foster community engagement. It's not just my mission, it could be a shared effort." For every ounce of fear that threatened to creep back in, Sarah met it with a fiercer wave of determination. Out there, in the bustling world she'd held at arm's length for so long, were allies, individuals who might resonate with her vision, all waiting to be invited into her journey. The crowd appeared to grow smaller and larger simultaneously, recognition dawning among the faces. They weren't just bystanders any longer. They reflected her hopes, each one eager for something real to rally around, signaling a readiness for change. "And what if it fails? What if you can't deliver?" The businessman's skepticism was unmistakable, but so was the hint of doubt threading through his words. She caught her breath and opened her mouth, wrestling with the fear of failure that danced along with excitement. But behind that fear, she recognized the deeply rooted desire for purpose. "I will try," she stated firmly, her voice resonating with a confident edge. "I have tried before, and I am not afraid to do it again. Failure will not define me, it will inform me." In that moment, she glimpsed a possibility that stretched far beyond what her mind had previously dared to conceive. She could weave a narrative, not just for herself, but perhaps for others who, like that beagle, felt trapped between fear and trust. As she continued speaking, painting a picture of the sanctuary, time slipped into its own rhythm. Her words became vivid strokes on a canvas scored by compassion and urgency. Yet, despite the warmth blossoming in her chest, Sarah knew she needed a strategy. Every ounce of her emerging confidence was countered by the pressing reality of logistical planning. Amidst all that, another strangling thought wormed its way into her mind. Was she equipped to lead this trial? The faint echoes of self-doubt threatened to pulse again, reminding her of past moments of retreat. But just then, as she looked deep into the eyes of the beagle, it became clear. She had faced storms of scrutiny, battled the tempest of her uncertainty, and emerged with a vision worth pursuing. Sarah's fingers twitched, a subconscious movement signaling her commitment, beckoning her towards action. She felt herself step into her power. It was time. She locked eyes with the businessman one last time, and in that gaze lay the challenge. If he couldn't embrace a shared vision, she would carve one out alone. As murmurs of support began to rise again from the crowd, electric and propulsive, a surge of energy welled up within her. With one last, decisive thought flashing through her mind, she resolved to forge a path even if meant redefining the horizon. Her destiny began now. What would be the next step in dismantling her barriers and igniting her ambitions? With the weight of potential resting heavily on her shoulders, she felt ready to turn the page to the next chapter, whatever it may be. The following day dawned bright and crisp, holding a promise that Sarah had begun to believe in. After the adrenaline rush of the chaotic adoption day, she had immersed herself in logistics and planning, her heart racing with every decision. The sanctuary she dreamed of was taking real shape within her mind, bursting with possibilities. The burning energy left over from her last confrontation had ignited something deeper within her. She was no longer just wrestling with self-doubt, but wrestling it into submission. As she entered the shelter, the familiar sounds of barking dogs greeted her warmly. But today, Sarah didn't just hear the calls of animals in need. She was fully of sound purpose. She addressed her fellow volunteers, eager to share her vision, her excitement palpable. Let's brainstorm ideas for the sanctuary. It's a chance for all of us to create something that transcends what we've done before. The room filled with anticipation as she outlined her thoughts and strategies. Sarah expected hesitation, but what unfolded was a tapestry of ideas woven from the collective ambition of the team. They built on concepts related to public engagement, educational programs for pet owners, and even fundraising initiatives. The possibilities expanded, filled with enthusiasm, and she soaked it up like sunlight. They were not just contributors, they were co-architects building the future she had long yearned for. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah diligently worked on creating a structure for their plans. She researched successful animal welfare organizations and drafted outreach proposals. She made calls to local businesses and community leaders, weaving her story of personal growth and communal ambition, emphasizing the importance of animal welfare. Slowly, the walls that had once constricted her began to crumble under the weight of her entrepreneurial spirit. One afternoon, Sarah received an email from a local business eager to hold a charity event for her planned sanctuary. A sense of recognition and accomplishment coursed through her. The ripples of her early struggle were now transforming into tangible support. She called a meeting, gathering her team with contagious excitement, sharing the news that blossomed into a wave of inspiration. They planned a fundraiser that would unite the community, elevating the mission beyond their own individual paths. As the fundraiser approached, Sarah found herself standing at the intersection of anxiety and exhilaration. She engaged her mentor, Lila, asking for advice on public speaking. "You have a message that matters, Sarah," she assured her. "Trust in that." Yet even with these encouraging words, the doubts attempted to claw their way back into her mind. Would people truly rally behind her vision or remain skeptical? But the day of the event arrived with an electric atmosphere vibrantly alive. The shelter transformed into a showcase of animal love and community spirit, adorned with colorful banners, tables filled with adoptable pets, and informative booths spotlighting their mission. As she stood at the podium, flanked by Buddy and the beagle they had saved, the crowd buzzed with anticipation. The survey of smiling faces offered comfort in her nerves. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, heart pounding yet resolute. "Today, we stand not just for animals in need, but for the potential within ourselves. Each step we take together fortifies a community bonds that benefits everyone." Her words came alive, animated by the sincerity that now coursed through her veins. The speeches, demos, and stories that followed transformed the atmosphere, showcasing her vision in full bloom. Animals found homes, laughter filled the spaces, and donations poured in, creating a sense of unity. The businessman who had once scoffed at her aspirations stood in the corner, arms crossed, but even he appeared captivated by the momentum building before him. As the sun set, painting the sky gold, Sarah felt a powerful sense of fulfillment wash over her. No longer the girl fading into the background, she had stepped into her soul's calling and made it known. There was no turning back now, for in this moment, she had conquered fears, rekindled old dreams, and embodied growth. Weeks later, the first board meeting of the newly established sanctuary unfolded. Sitting at the table alongside her team, she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Each face lingering on her as they shared in transformative conversations filled her with renewed strength. This was not mere success. It was profound recognition of what it meant to rise, persist, and create. "Let's do this together," she said, looking around, her heart swelling with gratitude. This is just the beginning. Whether they faced challenges or sought further healing, Sarah felt ready. She had conquered her self-doubt, transformed skepticism into strength, and now stood firmly grounded in her purpose. Her story shifted from a solo narration to a communal symphony, a testament to achievement forged through individual courage and collective ambition. The journey stretched forward, but it was her course to navigate. Wonderful, challenging, and liberating. And as she looked through the window of the shelter, golden light flooded the room, illuminating her path ahead. The promise of potential unfurling, not just for her but for every life she would touch moving forward. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that enlighten every journey of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We need your support to keep spreading these inspiring tales. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. We want to hear your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this hopeful conclusion. Let's make a difference together.